The last few months, we've added 2 new headphone models to our lineup. They actually both replaced existing models that are no longer, have been retired. We have the new Diana TC Signature. These are both Diana series. The Diana TC Signature, which is the flagship Diana now, and the Diana MRX, which replaced the Diana MR. And we want to talk about the differences because obviously there could be some confusion. We did come up with a new novel way to extend bass response even further on a planar diaphragm or a planar driver with the TC Signature that we call extended bass response or EBR. And we've incorporated EBR into the MRX. And the first thing I could say is it seems like there's some confusion in that. People think, well, are they both the same? And not really, even though they both have the ability to go down to 5 hertz at a minus 3 dB point, and even lower if you want. You could still feel it down below 5 hertz if you have anything that actually is recorded that low. But it's assuming you have an amplifier that can handle that. But bottom line is that we should cover the differences between these two models, and primarily that's what they share. Let's start with that. Is the ability to go way into the sub bass range, flat response, way below 10 hertz, which is pretty cool for a headphone, any headphone.
Are you sure you don't want to just do this video yourself?
I know. Did I just say too much?
So the Diana TC has been resurrected because that was gone for years. So
right.
That's back now with the TC Signature.
Yeah, and I think there was a hole there was a gap in our lineup where people were missing something that was nice form fitting. It wasn't a 1266.
Right. Yeah. And because the TC itself was never really a mini 1266, even with pads. There was just too many sacrifices, and the resolution was in that form factor was a little much.
Yeah, so. It was more than most systems could handle. You needed the proper system to mate with it, and unfortunately at the time there wasn't a lot out there that would mate.
And I think we got close with the DZ, especially when you added like base ported pads, but then it kind of lost something else.
Right. That's why I needed we had to fundamentally change how we thought about making the TC. We're like, we got to start with the bass, right?
Right.
Get at that 1266.
Well, the base ported pads, I was here when that launched.
Yeah.
Was it was an add-on, right? But in order to add the base ported pads to any of the headphones, you did have to lose something.
Right.
And it was that sub bass. Mm-hmm. Didn't muddy the mids. It was great. And it's great for anybody who has a Diana V2 or something, like the base ported, they're great.
Right.
But you always had that sacrifice. So This is the first time you're tuning for base ported pads.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what came about with the Diana TC Signature, is we added the extended bass response, or the EBR, the new driver tech, and we call these the next gen planar drivers that we make and build here in house for this headphone. And the TC Signature went way down below 20 hertz, and in fact it measures flat below 10 hertz, and we incorporated that into the MRX.
Yeah, but the MRX took a little bit extra to get there because of the tune the way it was. It didn't just fit.
No,
it didn't just start working.
Right.
It took some more changes.
It's a different headphone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a Diana. It looks the same, but it's sonically different.
Yeah. But before, it was a really intimate experience, meant to, really make you feel like you're in the room with the recording and stuff like that. But this setup is much more of a near field speaker.
Yeah.
It feels like you're sitting in the sweet spot, no matter where it is on your head. And in that way, it's very cool because it's not like it's just dumping all the sound directly into your ears. It doesn't feel like it's in your head. There's still like you're in a room with a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one way to describe it is it's kind of like having a bubble around your head of near field imaging, where you could pick out all the different placements of instruments and so on really well. We certainly think that it's very applicable to a pro setting.
Yeah.
In fact, it would be excellent at this, particularly if you're interested in knowing what the extreme bass response sounds like in your mixes. I think most headphones will fall off the planet and either not be able to reproduce that or reproduce it in what would you call it? A not so. You don't want to hear the way they reproduce bottom end.
Most of the time to get to that, you see EQing, and the EQing bleeds into the other frequency responses to the point where it's just pushing the amp out of its spec or something like that.
Yeah, you're pushing the driver so hard that it gets into the mids, and that's a very common thing with speakers, any speaker, loudspeaker.
Yeah, you got to start
headphones.
EQing at like -7 or something, just so that you have the headroom to bring that bass up.
Yeah.
And then just all of it just starts falling apart.
Well, fortunately, because planar drivers are about the only thing that can do that sub bass below 20 hertz well, dynamics really can't go that low in a headphone. We're fortunate that we have a planar driver to begin with. Secondly, it's a unique planar driver. We have a patent on it, so no one else is using the same tech that we are. And we started it with the AB1266, which we're known for being able to do crazy bass. And, we've been working toward this goal with the Diana series for a long, long time. And like you suggested in the past, we finally figured out a way to make it breathe more in these new series. And it's a combination of, really skillful machining on the frame side, understanding the acoustics of our headphones and our drivers and what they require. It's been an uphill battle.
I think the fit was a really important part of it too. Getting that seal and setting in the right place has always been crucial, and it can be a fun way to tune it, moving the headphone around on your head.
It is cool.
But that's not universal, and most people, including our customers, are just putting them on their head and listening. So getting the fit and the form factor right was also really important.
Yep.
Well,
and we didn't really have that until
reducing weight too. I mean, obviously that helps. I mean, they've since I pick up like even an old TC. It's like, oh, I forgot how much they've changed.
Noticeable.
Even though it looks very similar, when you hold both in each hand, it's like, wow.
It's like 100 grams difference, I think.
It's a lot.
Oh, yeah. We were under $299 at this point without the ear pads, which is just incredible.
Yeah,
especially with all aluminum with planar and everything.
Yeah, and the huge magnets we have in here.
Yeah.
So,
but the fit, the lightweight part isn't as impressive to me, other than the comfort.
Sure.
In that we did that in a way that actually made the frame more rigid.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So we actually increased acoustics by removing material and making it lighter.
Right.
Which, think about doing that in a speaker.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm going to make the speaker 50% lighter, the frame.
Well, yeah, you don't
it's going to sound better.
Yeah, you don't care about weight as much in speakers.
Right.
Usually it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, you go 2-inch thick aluminum sides. This weighs 800 pounds. It's fine.
Yeah, some of the best speakers in the world are probably 500 pounds plus a piece.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy. The cabinets are crazy. They just use pure mass and thickness to dampen resonances.
Yeah.
In this design, we've been working continuously improving the machining process of these frames, where even within a line in the past, the frames have actually been improved while the line exists, because most of our lines have been around for about 3 years. So during that 3 years, we just don't stop. We don't just stop working on it. We're always working toward a better sound.
We had a short recently in which Eric was talking about the differences in the frames, and something that kind of just glazed past is like one was named frame 52 or something, and the second generation
B2.
one was we're already on 7.
Yeah,
it's like we went through 50 iterations the last one, and now we're on 7 of the next one.
Yeah.
But they do look similar.
Right.
So they have we're very happy with the general shape of the frame and how it marries to the slider and marries to the ear pads.
Yeah, it's mainly internal. And usually for most of the things, it requires custom tooling, which then we need to, refine and change. And so, it takes a little while, but that's why we hit like levels.
Yeah, every time Eric comes from the design standpoint, everything comes up with or even myself in suggesting what we could use for acoustics, he's like, well, that's going to be difficult to machine. I have to get custom tooling. I have to do this. And so he's got to figure out how to make it. You can come up with all the ideas in the world, but you still got to be able to make the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult in the long-term part, where you could spend months just I throw out an idea and say, hey, I'd like to be able to do this at this frequency. He's like, okay, but I can't right now because, we got to do this first. So it seems easy on paper to me, just blurting out an idea. Can't you just machine the thing? But when it comes down to actually making it, it's not so easy.
Yeah, and that's the problem with custom tools. You don't really know until you have that tool made, get it, use it, try it, see what problems there are with it, and then it's like, oh, that didn't work. So now we need to make another new custom tool.
Yeah.
So
if let's rewind, say, before we started working on the TC signature, if I came to you and was like, I really like the MR, but I need it to do this.
Right.
We wouldn't have had any idea.
Right.
It wasn't until we did the TC signature
Right.
that we saw that was even possible.
Right.
So it's funny how we watch that process go forward. So.
Yeah. It's been never ending. It really is. We've been doing it since our first headphone 13 years ago. And, there's a lot of time in these new frame sets. Now, to cover the differences between these two models, the TC Signature and the MRX, let's talk about that a little bit. The bass response measures similarly in that they go way down below 10 hertz, flat on a test head. Really measures that low. So these things could do sub bass like no problem. And it's clean and it's quiet and it's in proper perspective to the mids and highs. So you got all that going for you. However, that's where the differences occur between the two of them, and we should talk about that in terms of the sense of space that each one of these things are made for.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar in many ways, but they're very different both in spec and in sound. They both present things very differently because of that. The TC Signature is a very wide, very deep, immersive experience with a lot of dynamics. Mm-hmm. It can punch hard when it needs to punch hard. All the transient decay and everything that goes with it is very pleasing and immersive and exciting and interesting. Where the MR is much more mid-focused still.
Absolutely.
The sound stage is more of an imaging tool than it is a experience, and it's near field. It's near field though. I still struggle. To explain how a near field sounds. I know how it sounds,
right?
But how do you explain that sound to someone who doesn't know what it sounds like?
Well, I'd say first of all, MR stood for mid-range back in the original MR. The MRX takes that to a little further extent. The mid-range is close, up, and intimate. It's close to you, so you're really hearing what the microphone's picking up, which you'd want to do if you're, doing a mix. And you're adjusting levels accordingly. It's not too strong. It's not overpowering. The sense of space in the mids is also huge. You can hear around the singer. You can hear around that space. It's not just a flat wall of mids vocals. So the life essence of the mids are there in the mid-range and the vocals, which is really cool, which will tell you, how good are you picking up? Or, do you have a limitation here? You're filtering too much. You're taking away too much life when you're doing the mix. So it's really cool in that sense.
You can hear the singer, but if it was too much, you'd only hear their voice, even though there's more being picked up.
Yeah, and that's a limitation because you don't know how good you're capable of making the mix if you can't hear it. So we see that with a lot of different headphones. Most headphones don't have that level of clarity and resolution without being overbearing. And, that's really a delicate balance to be able to just produce a lifelike sound as if you just were listening to the person singing or talking and be able to play that back translate that exactly is very difficult to do. And so everyone's working around their speakers and headphones always. You're always doing that. You're always saying, well, how good am I really? How good is the mix actually coming through from what the original recording sounded like? It's always a workaround. So we tried to minimize that, and our drivers are really good at that, and we've been really good at doing that too. So we tried to minimize that with this, and this is why I think from a pro use, this MRX would be awesome.
Most of the studio headphones I've heard have a lot of the information there, but the placement is pretty rough. It's more intimate. So it's like, if you're listening, and especially if it's a busy track, you can probably pick out the thing you're trying to find. But in general, it's flat with everything else. So it could be, I could see where it's challenging. So
I would say if you could have the ability to listen to both at the same time, start with the MRX. And you'd be like, oh, this is good. And sphere is a good way to, it's like a bubble around your head for soundstage and such. And then go to the TC, and it's like 2 seconds in, you're like, oh, essentially that bubble disappears. It's just open.
The TC doesn't have spatial limitations. It kind of takes a lot of cues from the big 1266. Depth is something that most people don't hear in headphones because most headphones are just full of reflections. You can't get depth when a lot of frequencies are bouncing from an inch away from your ear all over the place and coming right back at you. That completely eliminates depth. It's just, and that's why a lot of headphone listeners let's back that up. A lot of headphones listeners are accustomed to that kind of sound. So sometimes a headphone like Dyna TC Signature, even 12.6, is foreign to them.
Right.
They're like, I'm missing mids. And it's like, no, they're there, but they're not bouncing around, all over inside against things inside your headphone and coming right back at you. Yeah. They're still in the mix, but now they have proper perspective with everything else, and the depth, the layering that's available on a headphone like TC is crazy. The TC Signature is really, if you had a really good speaker system properly set up, this thing you could just put it on and it'd be like listening to your speakers. You wouldn't know the damn difference. You literally wouldn't know. There's slight differences in acoustic perspective, but you would fall in love with this just as much as you would your really high-end system.
Yeah, if you were sitting in your 2-channel chair
yeah,
and you closed your eyes so you couldn't see the room and then put the headphones on, you would feel like you were transported to a different room.
Right.
Not that you had just put headphones
Totally.
on. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea.
It's full resolution.
I get it for sure.
It's full bandwidth, top to bottom. It's like listening to a big system without having anything. Yeah. You would swear you're in a room with a giant pair of speakers and subs, but they aren't there.
Well, not at this level, but at much lower levels. There are headphones that have a wide soundstage or a lot of staging, and the trick is they just made them really open.
Yeah,
they're very open, and the frame is tucked in behind, so it's even more space out. But then what you lose is the detail. You make the sacrifice there, and I think people miss that part of it because they're just enjoying the sense of space. Oh, this is great, but put on a track with a lot of detail and really try to analyze your music the way you normally would, and I think you'll find that you're losing a lot, or parts of it are even muffled. And you're just not realizing it because of how open it is. Mm-hmm. When you step into the TC Signature, you get both of those. You get incredible detail, micro detail even. You might have to turn it up more than you'd expect because the space is there. So if you really want to, you just got to turn it
Depends
louder,
what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
It depends. And I think when you get to this level of headphone, your focus will shift a bit compared to speakers. You'll suddenly find yourself hearing things you weren't hearing on the speakers.
Right.
And that's cool. That's cool.
I heard someone call the 1266 not that long ago. They said, "Oh, it's deeply V-shaped," which basically just meant the mid-range is cut out completely and it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, listen to the headphones sealed. Whoa, where'd those mids come from?
Yeah,
of course they're
right.
Like, it's just you're so emphasizing the bass in treble and how you're tuning it.
Right.
Like, it's just the mids just
and
are
that's just
now.
a telltale sign that you're used to hearing the sound of headphones.
Right.
You're used to hearing reflections off of objects within your headphone. You're used to hearing the back of plastic, and that accentuates the mids. That's the portion of the spectrum that tend to bounce back at you and within a headphone enclosure. And we've again, like a 1266, we've pretty much eliminated it in this.
Yeah, like you can make an open back headphone that's mid-range forward.
Sure.
It just won't. It'll have compromises to depth and space and everything else.
Well, if you want to hear more mids, you take an open back headphone like this, like a really open back like this. A lot of people are familiar with the HD800s. They're very open back.
Right.
Put your hand near it.
Right.
You'll hear the reflections off your skin.
Yeah.
At certain frequencies, skin bounces certain frequencies, and some it doesn't. Take anything. Take a piece of wood.
Oh yeah.
Like and put it near the side, even 6 inches away from a really open back headphone. Yeah. All of a sudden, you'll hear the sonic character of the reflections off that wood, and that's really what you're hearing. With
you're
most
talking
headphones.
about the HD820.
Oh, the 820.
It's a piece,
that's
it's a piece of glass.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, right.
And it's reflecting the mid-range back.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you're reflecting off a glass.
Yeah.
Now they did it on purpose.
I'm not gonna scale the 820, but the HD800 is the best headphone Sennheiser makes.
Yeah, agreed.
Not the 820.
Yeah, agreed. And it's useful in that sense as a tool because it is so open, And that's pretty much what we have here with the TC Signature, with the exception that the fact that it's got its overall balance and character is more accustomed or more tuned to a very well tuned high end system. It's not bright, but yet it has all this spatial information. So it's not as laid back as like maybe a hi-fi man. Like those
It's
are a
very
little more.
very resolving, very detailed,
Yeah.
but in a pleasing way that's going to show you what your amp sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think people get lost on too, is they don't realize how much of their amp they're listening to sometimes,
Totally.
or how little of their amp they're listening to, depending on their headphone. Our stuff's going to help you hear it. This isn't like one of those, well, it's going to sound the same on every amp. No, none of our headphones are that way.
I love the TC signature on a big tube amp. In fact, Woo Audio's just shipped me a new Gen 2 WA33 because I have the old one, the Gen 1. And so I'm looking forward to playing it with on that because the TC signature sounds really good on the original WA33. And knowing what the new Gen 2 brings to the bass, like,
Right, yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I was actually, well, you could see in the video, but we were surprised at how much better it was than the Gen 1.
Yeah. And then the MRX is, it's just as transparent to the equipment. You need something, if you're doing in pro audio, you're going to need a very detailed, transparent amp, I think, for the MRX. Whatever it is. We're not talking tube amps and stuff like that. We're talking a really resolving, detailed, solid state amp that's going to pass your recording through for sure.
The MRX loves good solid state. The new Woo Audio WA12 is exceptionally clear.
Yeah.
But now you bring into focus what the source of the DAC is.
Yeah.
So, if you really want to know what's going on, you probably have to spend just as much money,
Now, it sounds great with tubes. Like, I love it on the WA22, but you immediately were like, well, all I sound is the tube. Here is the tubes.
Right.
And I was like, well, yeah.
Well, yeah,
That's great.
You might want that.
That's what I want.
If you want that, yeah. I'm accustomed to trying to make the tubes disappear and just listen to spatial information. But but you're right. If you wanted to pick out the sound of a tube, the MRX would be
So
phenomenal.
MR versus MRX, I've found that the MRX is more transparent to the equipment, where the MR seemed a little bit more forgiving.
Right.
It kind of had more mid-range timbre almost that kind of smoothed over some of those details, which was nice, and I love the sound. But this one kind of is a bit more incisive there.
Yeah.
So it.
But it's still not too particular. Like, it's not crazy.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
that's what that tune does.
Right.
The tune is accessible.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's fun that we made it for pro, but honestly, if just some random person was like over at my house and was like, "Hey, I've never actually heard your headphones. What should I hear?" I'd be like, "Well, I mean, this is very easy to listen to."
Yeah, right.
I know they're gonna enjoy it, whoever it is. So
And that is kind of the cool thing about any of our headphones is they will scale with the gear. You can start modestly and, just continue to improve the system and the whole thing comes up. The headphone's not a limiting factor. The speakers here in this case are not the limiting factor.
yeah,
Unless you want a completely different sound. And, we get that a lot. We get people that in the past would buy an MR and then they would go to DZ and then they would go to 1266 or something like that. And we see that a lot. And I'm sure the same thing will happen here. They'll get a Joel and then they'll go to the Diana MRX or they'll jump right to the TC signature.
I hope that I hope that it's not a clear step. I think it's more of a decision. If you're going from the Joel and you want to
Especially with these new models.
Yeah,
Agreed.
if you have a Joel and you're like, I want to take a step up, I think you're picking between the MRX and the TC signature, or the MRX and the DZ.
Right.
I don't think it's as clear of a
Agreed.
stepping through it, really.
It's true.
So
Yeah, these have become a bit more focused in their individualities of sonic signatures, and which should be, because before it was a little more blurry before, going between different models. Now it's much more focused, and which makes your job easier too, because you're the guy that gets to recommend which model somebody's looking for.
It's hard because I'll get a pro who's like, hey, I'm looking at the Diana DZ or something. I'm like, MRX. And I can hear them thinking, why are you telling me to buy the cheaper thing? It's like, because I want you to buy the right thing.
Right.
I want you to make one purchase once and get the right thing the first time.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited for that industry in particular because right now they don't have a whole lot of options. It's Sony and Bear Dynamic maybe Shure headphones.
Yeah.
And then if you take a step up, there's 2 options, 3 options.
Right.
You're finding an audiophile device that also happens to work kind of for pro. You know, it's like, well, yeah, it's pretty good, but as long as I EQ this, then they still work for me. You know, I hear a lot of that type of stuff. It's like, oh, well, you know, that one's neutral. It's like, and then you look at the graph and it's like, well, it's Harman target neutral. Would you want to record a studio album on the Harman target?
Right.
I don't know about that.
Right.
So there's always all these compromises. So I think that if the industry was being honest with itself, that this is the first $2,000 and up studio headphone. I think really, when we really get down to it, I just, can you think of anything that's
No.
been there?
Particularly if you want to hear what your bass range sounds like in proper perspective. Nothing's going to do this. It's just not going to do it.
And I mean, it's actually not even that expensive compared to a studio setup.
It's relatively cheap.
Yeah.
It
might actually be on the cheap end when I think about like powered studio monitors.
Proper room treatment alone would cost $3,000.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally, the phone panels are freaking expensive nowadays.
They
There's no way, there's no cheap. I mean, if you want to do it right,
Right. I mean, like I can think of a dozen budget near field studio monitors, but like as soon as you take one step up, it's like, okay, well,
it's easy to
which ones
hit
are you
3K.
actually buying? Like,
Most people probably wish they had more like 6, 7, 8K or 10K in it.
right.
And that's what this is equivalent to, easy. So, yeah, in terms of accomplishing the task at hand, it's a bargain relative to trying to do speakers in a room.
For headphones, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's on the higher end, but it gives guys who are doing studio recordings, who are mastering and mixing, it gives them somewhere to go that they haven't had before. So,
and if you happen to do like multi-channel where you're in the Dolby, you're doing heavily in the Dolby where you're trying to recreate multiple sources flying or things flying around a room, who knows which, in terms of the mix for movies and so on, you're probably going to need 2 headphones. You're probably going to need the MRX for the mix, and you're probably going to need the Diana TC signature for the mastering or the end of it to be able to hear complete spatial information. But that's not to say the MRX can't do it all. It does it all quite well. But I think if you want to take it out to a level where a room full of speakers would be, you've got to go to an open more. You need depth.
Yeah, any Atmos that isn't headphones. I mean, I think those guys have to have a test chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
honestly.
they need a lot of speakers in a real room.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that the 1266 gets you close.
Yeah.
But it ends up being very specific to that person, whether it works or not.
True.
But I do think they normally have
At that point, depends on your hearing,
test chamber
how you listen.
Yeah.
And what you're accustomed to. And I mean, people could get. These guys are pros. They can probably get used to just about anything. But it probably boils down to what they're trying to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I can't get into everybody's head.
The Dolby has another challenge where it's always going to be down mixed for headphones, and how that happens, you have zero control over. Your system's the one that's doing it, and most of them don't take even a second to consider that. They don't make their Dolby mix and then go, oh, how does it sound on a pair of stereo headphones plugged into this thing, PCM down mix or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so it's even a challenge then. So when it happens, it's wonderful. I was just actually talking about this online. The last Billie Eilish album had an Atmos recording. So, 11.2 or whatever or something. And the fact that it down mixes to stereo seems like a miracle. Because it sounds incredible. It's not even my favorite type of music. I barely even like her voice. But it sounds absolutely incredible on headphones.
It's pretty cool.
And you can find someone in it found the guy who did it, who remixed it for Atmos, and you can watch. And he's like, well, yeah, and then, I always check with headphones, too, just to see how it'll sound on everything else.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well, that's why this album sounds great in the car. It sounds great in a store when you're walking around in the background speakers. It sounds great on your headphones. It's like, because someone actually took the extra step to make sure it sounded good on other things.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm also hopeful with a headphone like this, where, you've always been, a lot of these guys are just like, well, I just use AirPods for most of it. I hear that too.
Or
It's like,
something they've used for 15 or 20 years
Right.
because they've always used it and they're familiar with it.
It's like you've
It's
got a
like-
step. You
yeah.
have a place you can go.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to get out of your comfort zone if you
Yeah.
want to improve. You really do. And we run into the same thing with manufacturing products like this. We're a lot of times pushed way out of our comfort zone in terms of what we can accomplish with making something like a customized ear pad that's shaped a certain way. I mean, we push vendors to the limits of what they do. Just to get the company that makes the foam for us, literally we spent just for the little piece of foam inside these ear pads, $10,000 was the starting point to get anyone to try to make it for us. Just for the piece of foam, because we want it shaped and curved a certain way, and they're like, well, we either hand cut every one of them, or we have to make jigs, multiple jigs to cut this.
Also,
foam.
that someone can take it apart and be like, look, this foam costs $3 on Amazon.
Yeah, right.
What's Abyss doing?
Yeah, right.
like-
Yeah, no, it's not like that. And
It's 2 years and 10,000 hours and tens of thousands of dollars in demo parts
yeah,
Oh,
just
So-
to get a foam.
It was stupid.
it's so it's things like this where, we're constantly doing crazy shit like this, but the end results are here, and really, I think bottom line is you got to hear this stuff. You got to hear it in situ. You really got to use it. You got to use it for your purposes, and it'll tell you everything you want to hear. It'll tell you everything you want to hear. Work around it. Work with it. Build a system around it. These are educational tools too. They really are. They will teach people how to listen better and how to hear their stuff, and in a really nice way, in a really kind way. And so anyway, we've been doing this a long time, and it shows in the products, and to top it off too, like so far the people that have purchased the TC Signature are just blown away. There is not one person that didn't say something like, wow, was the minimum I think we got out of somebody. WOW.
I haven't seen I haven't seen someone go, oh, well, it's good, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
No. The TC Signature is incredibly accessible, and it's a shame. It's both a shame and a miracle. When you scale down an equipment, it still does those things in a cool way, which is also something that used to be lost.
Right.
The Dyna TC, you couldn't plug it into something.
No, it was pretty picky.
Yeah, it would just hurt.
Yeah.
It
was too resolved.
And this, like I've run it on $100 things, $200 things, tiny things, and it's okay. I'm missing something. I wish there was more, but it still does that cool bass.
Yep.
It still does a really cool sense of space. I think that if someone was challenging themselves to scale up and they were like, well, I want to start with the speaker, I mean, it's not going to clip, probably. There's not that much stuff that's really low end that doesn't have enough power to at least get some cool bass and cool sound staging.
Well,
So,
not only that, I mean, we've been doing this. We started trying to design a headphone in 08 or 09. The 1266 came out in 2013, so we're at 13 plus years. But before that, we were in the 2 channels since 1990. I was. You've been working with me since you were a baby, basically.
Yeah, well,
Same with Eric, the engineer, our engineer, my other son, who's usually on this channel. But bottom line is that we have a ton of listening experience. We all know what good sound sounds like. We've heard thousands of systems in our lifetime at the various trade shows and so on. We know what things are capable of doing. We know what transducers are capable of doing and what they're not. And and to be able to push it to the level that these things are at, it's just amazing to me. First of all, because I never thought we would be able to do that. But more importantly, is that to be able to give people a simple tool that they could just put on their head and hear the recording like this, to me, is just phenomenal. It really is. And to be able to hear through the electronics to the recording is just phenomenal. And you can hear everything. You hear cable changes, and you hear, you name it. It's there. It's right in front of you. It's presented. It's so simple. You don't need to worry about the room setup or anything. It's pretty cool to be able to get to this level. And it's taken, most of my working career, and same with you guys, because you've been here pretty much since you left college, to do this. So you're looking at a hell of a lot of experience and time put into these products at this point. and it shows. You know, we're at a point where they are so well refined for fit, sound quality, you know, reliability. I don't know where else to. I mean, what else can you say about it? We've really, really worked a long time on these.
These two models, I think, are aside from the Joel, I think that these two models are some of the most accessible products we've ever had, accessible products, and they're very easy to step into. And you can make a choice between sound profiles, and one's going to be more open and more spacious. One's going to be more intimate. They're both going to work well and do that, regardless of what your equipment is like. And if you have really nice equipment, it's going to do that even better.
Totally.
So, and if you're a pro, well, the MRX is a no-brainer.
Oh, totally.
So,
yeah, it's next level for this kind of for that kind of stuff. It really is. It's something that anyone in the pro community needs to try out to understand, you know, and then you'll realize the limitations you were working with before. Just they disappear.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a new thing that we ran into recently, though. Well, in the last year or whatever, when the Joel came out, is we're getting new customers that have never heard our headphones before buying Joel.
Or any high-end headphone.
Right. Usually, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
And the first or second day they get it, they email and it's like, all right, I already want to upgrade. You know, they want to go to one of these. You know, it's like
If this is this good.
But so they have like an anchor point. They like, all right, I understand now. And it's like, then they call in and then talk to Norm or whatever and be like, all right, well, so which way do you want to go with it? And then that's how you decide. You know?
Right.
But so then you get that, you know, the
initial
ethos. You know, you get the taste, and then it's like, all right, do you want to go more in this direction or more in this direction?
Right.
yeah,
So-
I mean, the Joel was meant to do that to the industry.
Yeah.
It was made to make all the other headphones around $1,500 to $3,000 look silly, you know, and it does. And that gets you the placement. That gets you the start of. You kind of hear a little bit of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and it does. And in an odd way, it does kind of do a little bit of MRX things, and it does do a little bit of TC signature
Right.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
the jack of all trades.
yeah.
Jack of all listening. Sorry.
Yeah, Jack while listening.
Yeah,
we
Joel.
really fell into that one, and it
Yeah.
really is that way. So, and for someone who that's your budget, that's an easy end game. There, you know, if that's where you're at,
Yeah.
Totally.
there isn't much.
It's a
reason
beautiful
to go
sounding
further than
headphone.
that. So,
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants something that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always want something better, but you gotta obviously there's.
yeah, but in the budget, and you know, and you're looking for the next step, and you want to find the next level, we have it.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So anyway, if you need to know any more about this than the last half hour or so of us blabbering has gotten, give us a call, email us. Norm's here to help you guys out. He's very familiar with all the electronics in the industry, all the different headphones in the industry, and how it all sounds. So he could point you in the right direction no matter what you're looking for. And on that note, thank you everybody for listening to us. Take care of yourselves. Thanks.